let's go ahead and dive into our passages. You're saying formula series basic for quant. Okay, Sonali, you want basics of quant, and you are absolutely right, guys. When Nishant says, Harshad says, a new series with Saral sir. Absolutely, yes, Harshad and Pratyusha, that's what we plan to do. Okay, so ready for the first passage? Let's take a couple of deep breaths. That is so underrated and so effective. Man, make sure that you're breathing from your abdomen, okay? And here you go. Go ahead, read it. Once you've read it, let me know in the comment box or give me a thumbs up and I'll take you over to the next slide. So in the last 4 or 5 years, we are getting passages from a lot of different areas, but then there are some areas which are more frequent. Ecology along with areas like biology are on the rise, so I thought that I'll take you through that today. So let's start. Yes, Ritik, absolutely, absolutely. It's the same doc that I'm talking about, and a huge thank you to you if you have gone on to fill that already. And I'm sure you'd find it very useful and helpful. Done with it? Should I take you over to the next slide? Here you go. I hope we are through with this, and here is your next slide in 5 seconds. Smallish paragraph. I am assuming that you're through with this, and let me take you over to the next bit. Okay, so taking you over to the last paragraph. Done? So typically, just a reminder, I'd probably keep saying this to you once every few sessions as a reminder, and for those who are joining in new, it will act as a pointer. So when we read the passage, we are not supposed to read it for detail, we are supposed to read it for overview. So by the end of this passage, I expect you to have three things in your mind. The first is, what is this passage about? Okay, and the second is the purpose of the passage, right? And then the third is the key idea of every paragraph. Now, can you do that because I have asked you to? Not necessarily so. It is a skill that needs to be developed through practice, through effort, right? So make sure that you put in that practice, that you put in that effort, and that should definitely help you go on and become better. Okay, so these are all very basic foundational things. You know, somebody a little while ago was talking about basics of quant, foundations, right? So similarly, reading comprehension also happens to have some basics, some foundations. So your ability to generate a mental overview is one such foundational thing. So make sure that you go through one article every day. In fact, if you struggle with this, and how do you know that you struggle with this? Just look at your accuracy rate in main idea questions. Or see whether you are able to refer to the right area of the passage or not when it comes to answering the questions. If you struggle in these places, then you know that you need to work on your mental overview. So you can start with an editorial, okay? Pick up a newspaper editorial, read it, and then jot down the key ideas. Jot down those three things that I talked about. And you can also choose to work with me a little more closely on these foundational things. We'll see if we can somehow. Okay, so let us start. Anukolov asking the right ecological question. It says ecologically relevant questions, or more relevant for that matter. Okay, so let's dive into the questions now. So here is your first question. What's your answer? Ritik, we do not take a lot of grammar sessions primarily because they are not asked in the CAT, but they are a part of the other exams. So when we start approaching those other exams, you'd notice a lot of grammar sessions happening as well. But if there is a specific area that bothers you, do share that with us, okay? Fill that Google Doc, mention it there, and if we see a fairly largish number of people mentioning a particular topic, a particular area, why not? I'd love to go ahead and talk more of that. Okay, so let us see. Now, this may look like a specific detail question, but the reality is it is an inference-based question. Why am I calling it an inference-based question? The passage does not mention the difference between natural disasters and ecological disasters. So we have to kind of infer it on the basis of whatever is given to us. So let's start with A. Ecological disasters are not natural and man-made. Man-made is something that is created by men or caused by men. One such example cited here in the passage of an ecological disaster is something like an oil spill. Now, is an oil spill man-made? Do men engineer that oil spill, or is that an accident? So you notice, and therefore to say that ecological disasters are not natural is something that will be untrue. So I've in fact given you this one example where we can prove that they are not man-made, and therefore A can be ruled out. How about B? The latter can be predicted and its impact could be minimized if studied. Yes. In fact, if you refer to the last paragraph, this is exactly what the author has said. That paragraph that started with "we need to start asking more ecologically relevant questions," that paragraph. So this is still consistent with the passage. C, ocean debris does not cause natural disasters but could become more dangerous. I don't know. I think none of you have anyway chosen this, so let's rule out C and D. So between A and B, B is a better choice because A is something that can be proven false with the help of the examples given in the passage. And therefore, the best answer is option B. Somebody's also picked up D. Let's look at D. We study the former after they happen and the latter before they happen. This part is false. In fact, in the last paragraph, the author says that we need to study them before, which basically implies that we do not study them before they happen as on today. And thus, D can also be eliminated. Okay, so B it is. Here is your next question on the screen. Go ahead, give it a shot. Virender, you are absolutely right. So there are some things, some ecological disasters which are man-made, and then there are some which are accidental, they are not man-made, right? That is why to call all of them man-made will be false. So that's what we've used to rule out option A. So what is the primary message of the passage? Hey, that's a nice little rhyme. Primary message of the passage. Reminds me of that song, Pocket mein rocket hai, pocket mein. It is a really fabulous movie. For those of you who are interested in entrepreneurship, sales, risk taking, you should watch this gem of a movie called Rocket Singh. Ranbir Kapoor taking risk and pulling off a really fabulous movie. Okay, now when I look at the primary message, we essentially need to refer to the last 3 paragraphs. Okay, that is where the author has shared what he or she wants us to go ahead and do, right? But there is no answer choice that captures the key ideas of all the 3 paragraphs. However, when I look at B, which says more in situ analogous studies. Now, you remember there is a paragraph where the author says that scientists study it in lab, where they use a significantly higher concentration of plastic. So it does not mimic what happens in reality. So in situ is at the actual place, at the actual situation where things are happening. So if you want to conduct studies, they should be analogous to, that is similar to the studies or similar to the actual conditions that are found at that site. And affecting fauna is affecting animals. So that's the second last paragraph. Asking more ecologically relevant questions sooner, that's your last paragraph. So it definitely captures the last 2 paragraphs. It misses out on the third last paragraph that talks about studying microplastics. So if you add it, it will become complete. But even otherwise, when we start comparing, A says research has to only include studies. Only. This is the third last paragraph, but does it say only? That's wrong, because we know that there are 2 more things to be done. C, current research on the impact of marine debris is not defective. Not defective. According to the author, it is, because we are not looking at microplastics and we are not looking at the impact of it on an entire population. We are just looking at some individual elements. Okay, D, papers published up to 2013 employ proper research methods, cannot be determined. CBD. So ruled out. And that's why B becomes the best answer choice, although one more point can be added to B to make it even better. Okay, here is the next one. Yeah, Sri, normally you know that we run our batches, right? So in our batches, we give this feature where you can download the PDF alongside. Unfortunately, YouTube does not make it convenient, but yes, I think if we strive to, we can. I'll see if I can do something about it. Let me see. Ishank, yes, it was. Every wrong answer choice, when thoughtfully created, is going to be a bug. Okay, so shall we see? A, these scientists do not ask. So this is something that can be found in the second paragraph, where the author says that they look at some birds and then they generalize it from there. And that is why the correct answer here should be D. When you say C, the author agrees with the perceptions but not their methods. Well, I think it is the third paragraph or the fourth one, where he says that majority of the studies are using right methods, right? Only some studies use the wrong methods. So to say that they do not agree with the methods of the studies, no, generalizing is what. In fact, let me take you back to that right paragraph. I'm sure once we refer to that, we'd be able to see it. See, this is where seabirds are mentioned. There maybe the study has shown that certain seabirds eat plastic bags, and the paper goes on to warn that whole bird populations are at risk of dying out. But the truth was that nobody had yet tested those perceived threats. There wasn't a lot of information. Now, if you combine all of this, I am sure you'd be able to narrow it all down to option D. Generalizations in the absence of inadequate data, right? And I think no other option has been chosen, so we can safely rule out A and B. So here is the next one on the screen. The perceived dangers of ocean trash for marine life in a majority of cases are, the perceived dangers are false, valid, premature, exaggerated. What do you think? This is another one of those inference-based questions which has not been explicitly labeled inference. Okay, B, C or B. So let me take you back to the relevant part. The perceived dangers of ocean trash. So look at the first couple of paragraphs, okay? In the first couple of paragraphs, they are saying that there have been studies conducted, and all these studies talk about risks, and they want to see whether these perceived risks are real or not. Then they go ahead and talk about one of the concerns that Roshman and her colleagues had with the study. But then look at this part. So they checked. So they asked what threats scientists had studied and what they had actually found. So in 83% of cases, the perceived dangers of ocean trash were proven true. Now let me take you back to the question. So 83% is majority of cases, no doubt about it, but because they were true, I think we'd simply go ahead and pick up the answer as valid. So premature basically means that, oh, we cannot have a definitive verdict yet. We need to wait for more data, but the fourth paragraph makes it clear that in 83% of the cases, despite the problems of generalization, etc., they turned out to be correct, valid, right? And that is why we'd go ahead and choose B as our answer. And with that, let's look at the last one. Slightly longer, take your time. Another inference based question. So we know that the CAT does ask a lot of these. So we get a lot of main idea, a lot of inference, and nowadays even some other CR varieties. So we'll keep bringing these questions more frequently. Anukolov, I would not really, I think just referring to the right part should have made it simpler. Let's see. Okay, so Nishant has set the ball rolling with his answer. Anjila and Anukolov have also followed suit. Let's start looking at this. So issues with the focus, scope and findings of previous research inform future studies cannot be determined. So the label will be can't say. So is A correct? No. But let's look at B. More than 50% of the past ecological studies failed to perceive the threats posed by marine debris. That's definitely false. In fact, a lot of them perceived it, and in 83% of the cases, they also turned out to be right. C, overgeneralize, this is true, has not been fully understood, this is also true. So in reality, C and D can be ruled out straight away because we are looking at what is not correct. And between A and B, you notice, B is definitely false, A is can't say, so B turns out to be a better answer choice and therefore we choose it. Ritik has sent something. अभी टॉपिक टेस्ट दे रहे हैं सबके और मॉक टेस्ट की स्ट्रैटेजी कैसे बनाऊं? ओके, सो ऋतिक, दो तीन बेसिक चीजें. ओके, ये सवाल ना बहुत बार पूछा जाता है कि मॉक टेस्ट देना कब शुरू करें, राइट? तो सबसे पहली चीज, आपका जब तकरीबन 30% सिलेबस हो जाए तो मॉक टेस्ट देने शुरू कर देने चाहिए. To begin with, I would expect you to write a couple of tests in a month. So the idea is you write a mock test, then you analyze it. That analysis helps you identify areas that are going to help you improve further. Then you work on those areas so that you start getting a few more questions right subsequently. And then you write another mock, identify some more areas of concern that you can work on, then you work on them, and then you write the next mock. So that's what you do once your 30% of syllabus is done. And once you reach around 70% of the syllabus, you should of course be writing them preferably every week. And in between, if you feel like, you can always increase that frequency. Okay, so और कितने क्वेश्चंस टारगेट करें आप? देखो, टारगेट का क्या है, दैट एट दिस जंक्चर लेट्स टारगेट 8 in every section. Once you start getting 8 questions right, push it up by another 2. So say 10. So let's see, but this is very subjective, okay? This is not a gospel truth. Some of you are already here, so you would like to target more. Some of you are probably able to get only 4 or 5 questions right. So for you, perhaps the target could be 6. So that really depends. But if you have gone through 30% of the syllabus, please start writing mocks as well. That's really very important. So think of writing a mock as standing in front of a mirror. यार पार्टी के लिए तैयार होते हैं, कपड़े पहनते हैं, शीशे में देखते हैं ना, तभी तो पता चलता है और क्या करना है. That's exactly how mocks are. Okay. So with that, our passage is done, and let's now get into a couple of para-jumbles. Okay, it's been a while. So here is a para-jumble for you. Please arrange these 4 sentences in an appropriate sequence and share that with me, and we'll see. Chalo, Ritik, that's okay. In that case, start going through the logical reasoning sessions more. Play around with puzzles, just carry a puzzle wherever you go. Whenever you're free, just think of that puzzle. That should help. Okay, so let us have a look at it. 4th says Sarah Polly. 3rd says just Polly. 1st and 2nd use she. So we know that a pronoun generally comes after the noun that it refers to, and that part of a name generally comes after the complete name, and this itself tells us that the other 3 sentences should come after 4th. So if I look at it, if I just make these 4 places, I know 4th definitely goes here. Thereafter, look at 1st. 1st says she achieves that what? By shooting the movie on the widest canvas possible, using the same kind of equipment that captured Star Wars landscapes and applied a muted color grading to every frame. So you notice, Polly lends the central conversation a visual gravitas normally reserved for epics. So how did she go about achieving that visual gravitas? That is mentioned in 1st. So 3 and 1 should definitely come together. Now that basically leaves you with 2 situations. Which 2 situations? It is going to be 3, 1, 2, or you can put 2 here and 3 and 1 will go here. So these are the 2 likely answer choices. So where should we put 2? Before 3, 1, after 3, 1? This is where grammar comes into picture. So I'm just focusing on tenses. Look at is, lends, achieves, all present, but 2nd suddenly gets into past. So if we put it in between, if I put it 4, then 2, then 3, 1, there will be an abruptness. Present, then past, then once again present without any transition. And therefore, putting 2 here will not be appropriate, will not be coherent, and that is why 4, 3, 1, 2 should be preferred over 4, 2, 1, 3. So 4, 3, 1, 2. So Virender, just look at this that. And then we see. If you put 1 immediately after 4, look at where 4 ends. 4 talks about vibrant cinema, 1 talks about muted color grading. So they will not go together. So that cannot refer to the details of how she achieved vibrant cinema, because you do not achieve vibrant cinema through a muted color grading. But when you mute something, underplay it, you can definitely add gravitas. You can make it look more serious. So that is why we prefer 1 after 3 instead of 1 after 4. So that's your answer here. And here comes the next para jumble for you. Try this out and tell me what you think. Ishank, absolutely. We use noun-pronoun relationships and a lot of other things to arrive at the right answer. Okay. So one thing is that it was thanks to hosting that Olympics. Now typically it should be plural, but then I did not tinker with the source. The source wrote that, I'm still sticking to that. But that Olympics refers to something that is distant, right? So this should come after 1964, right? So that's one thing. Then look at the other sentences. So after 1964, that because of the pronoun investors such as the famous Shinkansen bullet train, and then first also talks about something else that was built. And then when you look at second, says these infrastructure improvements helped. These is plural, right? So you have to have at least one more thing apart from bullet train coming prior to it. So one also satisfies that requirement, and therefore we would prefer 3, 4, 1, 2. Right? So the problem with 2 is when you say these infrastructure improvements helped, you need to have at least 2 infrastructure improvements of the past coming before it. Otherwise, you cannot justify a plural pronoun. And you have to combine 4 and 1 in order to achieve that. So 4 and 1 must come before 2. So we just look at these clues and zero in on the right answer. So 3, 4, 1, 2 for this particular paragraph for the reasons that I've just shared. And now let's move over to our next question. In this question, you'll get a paragraph with a blank. There are going to be 4 answer choices or 4 sentences that claim to fit into that blank. Your job is to figure out the sentence whose claim is the strongest. My suggestion, use elimination, otherwise things can get a little tricky. Okay, so here it is. Take your time, share your answer. I see a couple of answers already. And you guys are absolutely right. The correct answer is indeed A. That spares me from the bother of explaining it. But if you want me to talk about some answer choice, do let me know and I would love to. But otherwise, you've done a great job in identifying the right answer choice. If you work with elimination, I am sure you'd find this question easy. Okay. And if you need or want more practice, you can keep on attending these sessions. But then you can also head over to the app. But before you do that, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So make sure that you care for others, and even more importantly, make sure that you care for yourself.